And welcome back, rugby fans, to Rugby411. As always, I'm your host. My name is Joshua Shibata, and this is a video that I know longtime Rugby411 fans know that I've been dying to make ever since the rumors started to be true that there was going to be a brand new LA franchise, Major League Rugby LA franchise in LA. And now it has finally been announced. A lot of things have happened since my last video, which, of course, a little bit behind the curtains. As soon as I posted that video, was the big bombshell announcement of the official name of the where they're gonna play officially, the roster, ownership, all that. And so, of course, had to spend a little bit of time for the holidays. Which, by the way, Merry Christmas, everybody. Hope you guys have had a wonderful, wonderful holiday. Hope this video finds you all well. But now that the holiday season is over, it's time to get back into business right before New Year's and to go into, again, a video I've been so eager to make that I just wanted to make this video. Granted, I'm probably going to update this video once I do my individual preview videos of every team for the 2024 Major League Rugby season. But might as well strike the iron out of the fire as hot, as they like to say. And this is my preview video for the RFCLA Rugby Football Club LA team that has now just been established by Rugby411. So let's get into it. By the way, if you haven't seen it, there's a great video by the Rugby Rundown podcast done by two of the greatest players to ever be on the pitch, as well as two great guys off of the pitch. Alex Corbisiero, English capped rugby player who was the former scrum coach of the LA Guillotines, now working for the San Diego Legion. Wonderful, wonderful guy. And then, of course, Will Hooley, American capped English player who has played for the San Diego Legion as well as a few other teams in Major League Rugby. They did a great interview, sit-down interview with not only Peter Sickle, the CEO of RFCLA, but, of course, with Stephen Brett and Jason Dam, coach and player for now RFCLA, holdovers from Rugby ATL. Went into a little bit of detail, shedding a little news on how this all came about. Again, confirming where the team is playing, where the team stands going into the 2024 season. A lot of great stuff, stuff that I'll kind of be touching upon as well. Highly recommend you go check them out, Rugby Rundown. You can see that on, I believe, on YouTube as well on the Rugby Network. Absolutely free. Worth the time to check it out if you are an LA fan or interested in the ins and outs of the LA franchise. So, again, going a little bit in a nutshell, first of all, Peter Sickle. Peter Sickle is the CEO of RFCLA. He is one of three owners that also founded the Tel Aviv Heat. I don't know if the other two owners, along with Peter Sickle, are going to be running RFCLA. Right now, Peter Sickle is the face of the promotion, as they like to say. Basically explain how they had to kind of do a lot of things pretty much very, very quickly, especially pulling the franchise from Atlanta to LA. Did not have as much lead-in into the 2024 season as, say, Miami. So that's why everyone was wondering, where's all the news of LA? They just didn't have a lot of time. Even when they started interviewing the head coach, Stephen Brett, former head coach of ATL, now carrying over to LA, he even admits there wasn't a lot of lead up and build up to establishing this new franchise. He hasn't really even met a lot of the new players that are going to be on the team, which they revealed the 32-man initial roster just a couple of days ago. I'll be going over that as well in this video. So, as I'll get into later in the video, not a lot of expectations I feel is high because it is LA. It is a new franchise. LA did win their very first MLR Shield on the very first season of the Guillotines franchise. But this is a different franchise. There is different things leading up to this. Again, I'll go in more into detail when I start to talk about the team. But there's a lot of cautious optimism, let's put it that way, that this team will come about just in the right amount of time, but there definitely isn't as much build up or as much lead in as, say, the Miami Sharks, who I mentioned before in my last video. basically were promoting themselves at least a year ago, right after the 2023 season. So this is a little bit kind of put together, but you know what? For what I've seen right now, and I'm being completely unbiased here, completely biased here, I feel it's not so bad. We'll go into a little bit more in details, especially with the logo and the name, and how there's been a lot of controversy already with that. But again, I feel it wasn't really much different than with the Giltinis. By the way, season ticket holder #1 for the LA Giltinis, when the LA Giltinis were first announced. So, I don't feel like there's going to be much different when it comes to the LA franchise. There's always going to be people that are very particular about certain things. And again, like I said, there's certain things I really like about what's going on right now with the team. There's some things, we'll see. Right now, again, playing at Dignity Health Sports Park, which is the venue in Carson, not too far from LAX. If you're not familiar with the LA area, it's where HSBC Rugby Sevens is played yearly. Beautiful venue, about 27,000 people. Thing is, though, there's still a little bit of debate about exactly if the RFCLA is going to play on the main pitch, which is a 27,000-seater venue where the LA Galaxy also plays, or if they're going to be playing on the side pitch where the track and field is, which is a smaller venue, only 5,000 people play, 5,000-seater, where the Galaxy 2, I believe they were called, used to play. They are no longer, they're a defunct franchise right now. But it is a smaller field. I feel, especially from what I've been hearing from certain people that are Galaxy supporters, and also, too, as I mentioned before in my last video, the marketing right now and the way that the opening night's going to be on that March 3rd, I believe is the day, is Sunday. It's the last day of the HSBC Sevens tournament. Now, HSBC Sevens tournament is supposed to wrap up about maybe 5. We'll see. Kickoff of the LA game is 7. So there is a possibility that the game will be played in the main pitch. Not a lot of turnaround time. Pitch is definitely going to be kind of beat up. We'll see. Like I said, there's a lot. I've been talking to a lot of Galaxy fans, and there's some Galaxy fans and supporters that are not so happy about this RFCLA team coming in to share the main pitch. And as I mentioned before in my prior video, especially right now with the way that things are going, 5,000-seater venue, I don't think that will be a problem to fill. Especially on that first day, because you're getting a lot of the runoff from the LA Sevens event going right into this final. I mean, granted, it's going to be a long day for a lot of rugby fans, but hey, if you give discount tickets, give free tickets, you buy the ticket for the HSBCLA, get a ticket for the RFCLA home game, you instantly sell out 5,000. I don't think that's an issue. I think if I remember correctly, the biggest crowd that LA had was like 11,000 for the championship game. So it's not impossible to get. 27,000, that's still a big seater, but definitely not as big as the 75,000, which was the LA Coliseum. So, if we want to make it look impressive, the 5,000 seater might be a more likely home, but maybe they'll play the 27,000 seater. Again, also logistics might make more sense to be in the side pitch rather than the main pitch on opening day, sharing with the HSBC Sevens event. We'll see. Again, from the way the Rugby Rundown video played it, it looks like they're playing in the main pitch. But that remains to be seen. Alright, so a little bit also background on Stephen Brett, New Zealand head coach. He took over, he was coaching last season for Rugby ATL, took over for Scott Lawrence, who is now the current head coach for the USA Eagles rugby team. Stephen Brett had a very successful first year in 2022, making it to the playoffs. 2022, made it to the playoffs 11-5. And then in 2023, this last season, I kind of mentioned it in my preview video, they lost a lot of great players for the ATL team. So it fell apart where they ended the season 5-10-1. So almost an inverse of their record. Hopefully, with that being said, Coach Brett can learn from that, take the players that he knows will work, bring in some new players. And I mean, the roster, if you look at it, there again, like I said, there's a lot of things to be really, really hopeful as LA fans, that there's some really exciting players that are going to be on this roster. So there could be at least a little bit of turnaround for LA, the newly looked Atlanta team, as they go into the season. Big news, though, which is interesting, is that one of the assistant coaches for Stephen Brett is former Rugby ATL player and a star player, Kurt Coleman, who is basically announcing his retirement from MLR, is now an assistant coach with Stephen Brett. Breaks my heart because I thought Kurt Coleman was such a great player on the pitch for ATL, one of their best players over the franchise history. And then Neil Tuna is joining. He's a former Scottish rugby player. He was coaching the Jersey Reds in the English Championship, and he'll be joining in the staff as well. Let's go into the logo and pop it up right here. So the logo itself kind of reminds me a lot of what Rugby ATL went through when they changed their logo. There's been a lot of controversy with it. If you don't know the background of it, it is kind of ingenious. So the shape is supposed to be an acorn. Now, granted, what do acorns have to do with LA? Even being an LA native, I feel that is kind of a stretch. Now, granted, we do have a city called Thousand Oaks, which is located close to me where I live. So if you are in this area of the San Fernando Valley, which is, kind of a suburbia a little bit away from LA, you'll know that there's oak trees. But are we known as for oak trees? But I do like the fact that the L and the A make a shape of an A because it's supposed to be a throwback to their Atlanta roots, which I thought is a nice touch. The colors blue, gold. I mean, again, there are teams associated with them. Certain teams that I'm not really associated with here in LA, being a USC Trojan fan. But again, I don't think this symbol is that bad. I don't think the logo's bad at all. I think it looked pretty good on the shirts. Again, if you look at the Rugby Rundown, the players and the coaches and the staff had shirts with the logo on. It looked pretty great. It remains to see what it looks like on the kits. I'm hoping that it looks pretty impressive. But again, like I mentioned before, with the LA symbol, I mean, there was a lot of controversy with this too, being a Giltini and a martini glass. But, the fact that it does look like an LA, looks like a G, I mean, I thought this was a pretty great symbol, and it looked great on the kit. So I'm not hating on it as much as there's people hating on it on the internet. And the name too. There's a lot of people that have been saying that the name is very uninspiring, not creative at all. But to be honest, when I talk to a lot of rugby fans about what would I name the franchise if a new franchise popped up in LA, this was really the name I came up with, because we do have the LA Football Club, a soccer team out here. RFC is a very common usage of a name for a lot of clubs out in Europe. Why not RFCLA? And this doesn't have a bad ring off of it, RFCLA is not a bad name. And it's clean, it's simple, it's what it is. And I feel, again, when you think about all the things that are associated with LA, I feel that a lot of it has already been done, I mean, we have the Angels, we have sunshine, we have earthquakes. I mean, what more? We have traffic, we have, cars. What more do you associate LA? We have beaches. A lot of the things that are associated with LA are things that are already kind of used in other sports and other branding. I feel it's very, very difficult to come up with names that are specifically LA-centric. I think the only ones that have done it really well are maybe the Kings, the Angels for sure. I mean, we are the city of angels. And even the LA Galaxy. I just did some research. I didn't realize that the crest for the LA Galaxy is actually on the LA County crest, and I thought that's actually pretty ingenious. But, it's hard. It's hard to come up with a unique name franchise for a team, especially associated with a city like LA. And I think this is not a bad idea to just keep it simple, RFCLA. Now, at the same time, Rugby ATL, simple as well, Rugby ATL. But they did have a nickname known as the Rattlers. And I always thought that was an awesome name. Who's to say that over time with RFCLA, we might end up finding a nickname that will be like an unofficial name for us, I feel RFCLA is not as as uncreative as some people think, not as lazy as some people think. I actually think it's a very great name. And again, it says exactly what we are. We are a rugby football club located in LA. So I'm not hating on it as much as maybe the logo. The logo, again, I'm not against it. I see where the connections are. Again, the acorn may be a little stretch, but I do like the throwback to Atlanta with the A, the L and an A. I don't think it's as bad. Again, you'll see a lot of hate on the internet for the symbol. But again, the Guillotini started that way as well, and I always felt that in the end it worked out. So we'll see as time goes if the current RFCLA logo will work as well. So let's get into the roster. Now the roster, as was put onto the website, and again, you can go to the official Rugby FCLA website at rugbyfcla.com. They have not only the roster up, they not only have a little bit of information on the team, but they also have the opportunity to put your deposit down for season tickets right now. You have to sign up for their mailing list, but you can be on it, put on your $100 deposit. I've already done it. Very proud to be a season ticket holder for LA, just like I was with the Guillotinis. And I'm definitely going to be one of the first out there on the pitch for that one. But they released the 32-man roster. The interesting breakdown of the roster. So 11 players from Rugby ATL has carried over to the LA roster. As I mentioned before, Peter Sickle, the CEO of RFCLA, also is the co-founder of Tel Aviv Heat. Now, the Tel Aviv Heat are the first Israeli pro rugby team in the entire history of Israel, and they actually have become pretty successful over the couple of years that they've been established. They just played in the finals for the Rugby Europe Super Cup. 5 of the players from that team are now also going to be playing on Rugby ATL. A couple of the players have already had experience in Major League Rugby, including Jordan Chait, and he's just basically carrying over to the LA team. But we have, like I said, we have a pretty good mix of veteran and young players. We got some new players that have never set foot in the MLR pitch before. So there is some cautious optimism and some excitement to go over. So we'll run down the team right now. Let's start with the props. So at prop position, the biggest name we have is, of course, Alex Mahan, who was a capped Eagle, 3-time capped Eagle, talented prop, played with Rugby ATL, was one of their top try scorers of last year with 6 tries. He is definitely going to be the star of that front line for the props. Big, powerful player. Could also play as hooker as well. I think when we go into hooker, what they have right now listed as hooker, I think Alex Mahan might be your starting hooker for at least the first couple of games until the younger hookers start to kind of get used to the system and kind of can play on their own. But I think Alex Mahan, even though he is a tight head prop, will probably play as hooker as well. Also on prop is Dane Zander, an Australian player from the Queensland Reds. I believe this is his first time playing in Major League Rugby. Connor Grindle, he's a Canadian player who was picked up by Dallas in the dispersal draft when, unfortunately, the Toronto Arrows broke up, and then was traded over to LA for salary cap considerations. So Connor Grindle didn't have a lot of play time in Toronto. Will try to prove himself here in LA. And then Lincoln C. This is an interesting one. So Lincoln C., a graduate from Grand Canyon University, surprisingly was not drafted in the very first ever MLR collegiate draft, though he was highly rated coming out into the draft. Then ended up being signed by Rugby ATL. Didn't really get to see a lot of playing time. Been there since 2021. Hopefully he'll finally get his footing here with the LA team, but definitely somebody to kind of look out for. A young, talented American player for the LA team. Alessandro Henny, an Irish player coming over from the Irish club scene in Cork, is going to make his first appearance in MLR. And then Connor Young. Just recently, Connor Young, he's a Canadian national with 5 caps under his belt. He was originally signed over to New England, but Tyler Rowland was a player that LA picked up in the dispersal draft Unfortunately, Tyler Rowland did not sign, or at least has not signed yet. So in order to make up for his spot on the team, we decided to pick up Connor Young from New England, and I believe we got him picked up for some cap consideration for New England. So those are your props. Now, at the hooker, as I mentioned before, I believe Alex Maham might be your starter. But then for your hooker, we have a couple of young ones. Ben Strang, young American player, born in America but raised in New Zealand, played a couple games for Atlanta. Again, very young, only 22. Very inexperienced, but hopefully will start to find his mark in the LA team. And then Bruce Kayuka Peterson, a young New Zealand player who will make his first appearance in Major League Rugby. So those are your only two hookers, both of them very, very young. Maybe Bruce Kayuka Peterson has a little bit more experience internationally, but I believe Alex Maham might be the one that's going to be starting, at least for now, at the hooker position. Now, moving on to your locks. We have some really exciting players on this team, and you can't go any further than Yuri Van Buren. Yuri Van Buren, a standout from Utah, South African player, played for the under-20s in South Africa, came over from Utah for salary cap consideration during the preseason. He also can play the number 8 position as well. He's one of the 5 players that also plays for the Tel Aviv Heat. In 2021, he had a breakout year, 6 scores tried for Utah. He's always an exciting, strong player. Great pickup for LA, in my opinion, from Utah. We also got Regan O'Gorman, a Canadian-capped player, got picked up from New England, and we traded him for a salary cap and a second-round pick in the 2024 draft. So Regan O'Gorman, definitely somebody that the LA team really, really wanted. We traded off a collegiate pick for next year's draft for him. So definitely you can tell that LA really, really like Regan O'Gorman, really feel he can fit into the system. Then we got a English player, Theo Vukanasivak, who played for the London Irish Wasp and the Saints in the Premiership. Matt Gilhas, he is the number 10 overall draft pick in the first round of the 2022 draft. That was picked up by Atlanta, played in Kutztown, played a couple games for Atlanta, but it didn't really get to see a lot of time. But he is one of the few collegiate draft pick players that are going to be on this LA team that I really feel, again, if you want to support the young American players in Major League Rugby, Matt Gilhas is going to be one of them to watch out for. Again, the number 10 overall draft pick in the 2022 draft. Definitely a player that has a lot of potential to be a future franchise player for the LA team. And then Liam Antrobus, a Welsh player who's played in England for the Metcalfe Rugby Club. Now, our back row. Man, our back row is going to be something. I feel this back row is not only one of the most experienced back rows. I mean, we got people that have years of playtime, over a decade in the cases of some of them. But I feel this back row is going to be one of the most talented back rows right now of any Major League Rugby team. Let's start first and foremost with, of course, Jason Dahm, a holdover from the Rugby Atlanta team. Also can play the number 8 from the University of Clemson, 2-time capped American Eagle. He is going to be probably the heart and soul of this LA team like he was for the Atlanta team. Matt Heaton, he was the team captain for Rugby ATL, I believe, last season. He has been one of the top Canadian players, capped several times for Team Canada, played in the 2019 Rugby World Cup, he was voted Player of the Year a couple of times, I believe, for Canada. So a very, very experienced and very good rugby player. Matt Heaton's going to be a guy that a lot of the younger players are going to have to look up to on this team. And then we have a couple of new players coming in. The ones that I'm really excited about, first of all, Semi Kunatani from Fiji. This guy, he is not only a former Fijian capped international player, but a Fijian Sevens player, one of the top try scorers for the Flying Fijians in the Sevens, as well as a gold Olympic medalist when the Fiji team won the gold Olympic in 2016. This guy, even at the young age of 33, I believe can run circles around most people. I feel this guy is going to be huge for the LA team in that back row. So Semi Kunatani, welcome to LA. He's going to be exciting to watch. And then another guy that's really interesting from Namibia, Max Katijeko. He plays for the Tel Aviv Heat. Has been capped 24 times for the Namibian international team, played in the recent World Cup in 2023. He's going to have a lot of experience bringing that over to the team. And then a player I didn't really find a lot on, but Michael Amiris, a young South African player, has played in Russia, of all places, where he started his rugby career, and a couple of teams in the South American Super Rugby division. Now, at scrum half, our scrum halves are very, very young. But the one player that I'm really excited about, because it's the return to LA of Taz Smith, a young American raised in Australia, 22 years old. I only know about him because he was on the LA Guiltinis team on the last season before they unfortunately were disbanded. He didn't get to play a lot, but from what I heard from a lot of people, a lot of talent. Played for the USA's under-20s team as well, and this will be his first time back in Major League Rugby since the LA franchise went out of business. And then backing him up will be Niall Saunders, or I think it might be the other way around. Taz Smith will probably back up Niall Saunders. English player, played for Tel Aviv Heat as well, played for the Ireland's under-20. He played for Utah and then was traded over to Atlanta right at the end of the 2023 season. So Niall Saunders will probably be the starter at scrum half. Right now, those are the only two scrum halves that we have. So right now, scrum half is a little bit thin. But again, Taz Smith, I think, has a lot of talent. Niall Saunders does too. So eventually, I think both of them might grow to be some, again, future franchise players for LA. Now, our fly halves. Oh, man. Our fly halves, I'm excited for as well. I think if you know anything about rugby, fly half is a crucial, pivotal position. It is basically like the quarterback of the rugby team. If you have a very good fly half, I feel you'll have a good chance of winning any game. And speaking of fly halves, former LA fly half, Matt Cato, is coming back, unfortunately for the San Diego team. But we have some really good fly halves on here. First and foremost is the return of Dan Hollinshead to Major League Rugby. The New Zealander, he played for New York back in their championship winning team in 2021. He was one of their top try scorers of the year, 19 for 20 off of the tee. I mean, almost nearly perfect. He played a year in France and then was on the Southland Stags in the NPC League, which is the local club league in New Zealand. And now he's back in Major League Rugby. I think that's a huge get for LA. Dan Hollinshead, one of the most experienced players and a point scoring machine. Again, accurate foot. I feel this guy is going to really, really help a lot. And it's great because we're going to pair him up with Jordan Chait, the young South African who really blew me away in Seattle. I mean, when you have a guy who is pushing AJ Alatimu, one of the top point scorers in Major League Rugby, 2 years running, you literally are pushing him for a starting position in Seattle. That's what Jordan Chait was doing. That's how good Jordan Chait is. So the fact that we got him to come over to LA, he might be backing up Dan Hollinshead, at least for this season. But, I mean, what a great backup to have with a veteran like Dan Hollinshead. Plus, Jordan can learn a bit from Hollinshead, and I mean, that's just going to make him better. So, for our fly half position, we are pretty stacked. And then we also have some young players. Sam Walsh, who was a Cal Bear from Berkeley, played with the USA Sevens. And then Matt Entisev, one of our 5 draft picks of this season. Unfortunately, we've only been able to sign 2 of the 5, which is interesting, but he's one of the 2. Matt Entisev was the 5th pick overall, picked up by what was Atlanta at the time and now is LA. So he's coming over from Dartmouth College, 5th pick overall, as I mentioned before. He can also play fullback as well, so that's going to be, that will come in handy as well. Now, what's interesting is we have 2 really capable kickers in both Dan Hollinshead and Jordan Chait. We have a third one as we introduce the centers in Jason Emery. And Jason Emery was a star player for Rugby New York. A New Zealander, he's played all over the world, played for the under-20s in New Zealand, played in Japan. He's played a couple of teams in New Zealand as well, and then, of course, was with Rugby New York. We picked him up in the dispersal draft, which I think was a great get for us. This guy was very accurate last season as well, 21 for 28 off of the tee. He was also part of the Rugby New York championship winning team, so if all else fails, Dan Hollinshead, Jordan Chait, we can also get a kickoff from Jason Emery. Great guy to have in that center position. Playing alongside him is James Stokes, a veteran from an Irish veteran who's played a lot in the London Irish in the rugby premiership in Europe. Also can play fullback as well. And then Seth Purdy, the fourth overall draft pick in the 2022 draft, picked up by Atlanta. Only played a couple of games. Canadian player, played for Cal Berkeley, also played on the under-20s Canadian team. Will get his chance to kind of be a backup or at least learn under the tree of Jason Emery. But our center position, I feel, especially with Jason Emery there, we're going to be pretty solid at center. Our wings are also something that I feel, if any team kind of sleeps on the wings of LA, they're going to be in for a surprise. First and foremost, I want to focus on Andrew Coe, another guy that we picked up from Rugby New York. Canadian player, can play fullback as well. Played for the Canadian international team, played for the Canadian Sevens team last season. Super, super talented, scored 6 tries. Guy was phenomenal. Also part of that New York championship team as well. I'm glad that we have Andrew Coe on the wing. Joining him will be Jack Shaw, English player raised in Canada. He was the 22nd overall pick in the 2022 draft. Scored 4 tries in his first year in Atlanta. Also played in the Canadian under-20s. So Jack Shaw, a young up-and-coming try scorer. Will Leonard played for New York as well. We traded him from New York to Atlanta back in 2022. He has been a stalwart since then. Austin White, a young American player, is coming over from Atlanta as well. Caleb Strum, another young American player, played for the University of Alabama, drafted 7th overall in the very first collegiate draft in 2021, was drafted by the Austin Gilgronis, then traded over to Chicago, is now coming over to LA. So Caleb Strum, hoping to prove himself in the LA franchise. Then Nicholas Hartley, who was the second player that we've picked up in our draft this season that signed. 39th overall, 3rd round, 13th pick. Maybe also can play scrum half and fly half as well. And then Rory Van Vught from New Zealand. Plays fullback, played a few games for Atlanta back in 2020-2021, then went off to Scotland. Went off to the Southland Stags in the NPC and is now back in Major League Rugby. So that is the LA team. And again, I feel it's a nice, good mix of veteran players, some young talent, some people that are coming in for the very first time in Major League Rugby that could be really game changers and just will put a little bit of a spark in the LA team. I'm excited. I'm optimistically excited by this team. Again, I feel the only difference between this team and the LA Giltinis team is that, as Coach Brett said, not a lot of time for these players to kind of get used to each other. And unfortunately, I feel this has been proven, like with the Chicago franchise. You could have a lot of talented players, but rugby is really a game about knowing your team and knowing the intricacies of how your teammates work. Because unlike American football, which a lot of us are familiar with, there's plays. So you kind of go over plays and you practice, and as long as you get those plays down and they work, you're good. Not really hard to, can't say it's not really hard, but it's a little bit easier to get down in a certain amount of time. Rugby is a completely different creature because there are some set plays and set pieces, but otherwise it's just chaos. I mean, everything is improv. There is no time to stop and get these plays going, or, hey, here's our opportunity to do this play. Everything is improv. Everything is just the ball is going left, right, it's out of the scrum, ruck, whatever. And you got to just work off of instincts. And what that really comes down to is just knowing if the trust and the teamwork of knowing that your teammate is over your shoulder ready to get that pass. Or if you know that you can kick the ball down the field, your other teammate was going to run and get it. It really is the intricacies of knowing your team and knowing how everybody plays and works and what works with them and what doesn't. And the only way you can get through that, as we've learned again with the Chicago Hounds, as we learned with the Eagles and the lack of being able to practice a lot with teammates, is you have to just be constantly playing and practicing with this team. So the fact that, again, not a lot of lead-up time for LA, that's definitely going to hurt. The thing with the LA Guiltinis is a lot of people don't remember, but the reason why they were so good was they had like a good 3 weeks in Hawaii where they had a camp, and they all got to know each other, and they just done extensive work. 3 weeks of just being together. And that's the thing. I don't think a lot of other teams, because that was during the COVID years, I don't think a lot of other teams had that opportunity. But LA took the advantage of going to Hawaii and working with each other, and that's why when they came in, they were boom, ready to go. So, I mean, granted, there are 11 players from the old Atlanta team that know each other, 5 players from the Tel Aviv Heat that know each other, but then there's a lot of players that don't know each other. So it's going to be interesting to see how it works out. I'm being an LA fan, I'm going to be very cautiously optimistic and hoping that at least there's some turnaround. Obviously, I'm not going to make my way too early prediction of where the team will go in the 2024 season, because I got to really look at the rest of the teams in line. Also, too, the fact that 8 teams this season in 2024 can make the playoffs, I mean, that just means 3 teams don't. So the chances for LA to make it is still up there. It's just whether or not they cannot be the very bottom. And we'll see. I mean, again, you're already, I feel, God, San Diego, Chicago. Oh man, those 2 teams for sure are just building it's like a weapons war. Right? They're all stockading weapons of players on each side, especially with the closing down of New York and Toronto. And of course, your reigning defending champions New England still looks really impressive. So it's going to be interesting to see who ends up being at the very bottom. I'm not saying LA is. I say it will be a struggle, but we'll see. We'll see. If anything, for sure, I'm going to be there for pretty much every home game as a season ticket holder. And like I mentioned before, you can too. Go to rugbyfcla.com. Also, too, there is a Facebook support page for RFCLA supporters on the Facebook page. A certain somebody is one of the administrators for that group. So if you want to talk about the team, if you want to just learn about the team, maybe we'll do some get-togethers at the games. I'm down for that as well. Don't be afraid to check it out on Facebook. Again, RFCLA supporters. And yeah, of course, I'm going to be keeping track of this team as well as every team for the other 11 teams for the MLR 2024 season. I know from now until then, I'll be making videos previewing every team just like I did this one. Maybe update this one if we start to get new players or change anything. But yeah, and of course, I'll be making my way too early prediction of where all the teams will wind up going into the season, which is always fun to see how that winds up at the very end. Last season, I was horribly wrong with certain teams, especially the New England Free Jacks, who I did not feel were going to be in the top 4, let alone winning the whole championship. So my apologies to them. Definitely not going to make that mistake this second time, but we'll see. Again, I'm just super excited that LA has a team again. I can't wait to get an LA jersey. I was going to wear my LA Guiltinis jersey, but I thought might as well show some respect to the new team, and of course at least show a little bit of love to my old team. But again, very, very excited for the franchise, very excited for the upcoming 2024 season. I hope you guys are too. As I mentioned before, hope everybody had a Merry Christmas, and of course, wishing you all a happy, safe New Year. I'll see you guys in 2024.